Morning, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along today. I can see you all starting to filter in, which is brilliant. Um, I'm Francis Shaw. I'm head of programs and impact here at the Fore, and I'm joined by Laura Mitchell. And Laura is one of our long-standing strategic applicant consultants, who you may or may not be familiar with. The term strategic applicant consultants, basically the person that supports our applicants through the application process and helps them refine their application after they've submitted it, and will sort of provide feedback as they go through the process, and ultimately taking successful candidates through to panel. So just a bit of background. So yeah, so thank you so much for taking the time out to come along today for this question time session for our summer 2025 funding rounds. Um, in terms of how it will play out, the majority of the time will be just free time for you to ask as many or as little questions as you like. I will set the scene a little bit at the start around, who we are at the Fore, the application process, key dates, what we're looking for. And then I'll have a bit of a sort of quick chat with Laura to help set the scene from the strategic applicant consultant perspective. And then we can launch into the questions. And just to say, we are recording today because I know there's quite a few people who wanted to come along but aren't able to make it. And also, it's just useful for you also to have if you want to refer back to anything. So yeah, so let's get stuck in then. So you may or may not know who we are at the Fore, but basically the Fore were set up to create a society that can solve its own problems. We're the only venture philanthropy fund in the UK dedicated to small charities. And the reason we have a focus on smaller organisations is because we know that smaller grassroots organisations often have the best and most sophisticated solutions to the problems we face as a society. But unfortunately, due to a lack of access to funding and skill support, those solutions all too often don't get to see the light of day at a sort of larger, more national level. And the Fore was set up to change that. So, what are we about at the Fore? So, we offer unrestricted funding of up to £30,000, and that can be spread over 1 to 3 years. But we're much more than just about the funding itself. 60% of our charity said that the non-financial support that we offer was just as crucial as the grant itself. And in terms of that non-financial support, we have a whole sort of element under skills and training. So we offer pro bono skills support. We have a network of a few hundred pro bono skilled network members, who can provide the organisations that we provide funding to with capacity and help in a number of ways, whether that be hooking the organisations up with new trustees, or for example, it might be the organisation that we funded is working on an IT project and they would like a bit of help with some guidance and support on that, or a rebranding project, and we would be able to hook the portfolio up to the relevant individuals with the expertise in IT or comms or marketing or whatever it is. We also offer a series of workshops on a range of topics like financing, budgeting, building partnerships, fundraising, income generation. These are either heavily discounted for our portfolio charity. And in a number of cases, we also run free workshops as well. We also have peer networks where we link our portfolio leaders together in a range of different ways, from dinners together. We've also got a WhatsApp group, and we host bi-monthly peer chat sessions where we bring our leaders together and give them all an opportunity to learn from one another. We also offer for our portfolio free impact measurement courses to help them develop impact measurement frameworks and to support them with developing impact reports as well. So before I get into the nuts and bolts of the summer funding round, just wanted to really quickly set out what our eligibility criteria is. So we fund organisations that are registered charities, community interest companies limited by guarantee, community benefit societies, including those that are either charitable CBSs or non-charitable CBSs that have an asset lock. We ask that your annual income is under 500k. We fund across all sectors and locations, but we just ask that your organisation is registered in the UK itself. So summer 2025, this time we have three funding rounds on the go, which is very often the case with the summer funding round cycle. So we have our national funding round. We also are running a Northwest specific funding round, which is for organisations based in the Northwest of England. And that basically is made up by the counties of Cheshire, Cumbria, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, and Merseyside. And then we have our Southwest funding round, which is solely for organisations that are based in Cornwall. And if you're sort of thinking about which one to apply to, I would just basically say, please just only register for one of the funding rounds and submit one registration per organisation. In the interest of fairness, if you submit multiple registrations, we will only be able to accept one. So just a little bit about the funding round process in practice. The first step is registration, which is opening in less than an hour. And essentially, the way registration works is we will invite people to express an interest to apply to this round. If we receive more registrations than we have places available on the funding round, then places will be allocated at random. We are a charity, and the number of places we have available is determined by the amount of funding that we have managed to fundraise ourselves. Of course, we'd love to do more. We're trying our best. And also, we also limited the number of people that can apply because we want to make sure that we can give each and every organization that does get the chance to apply the opportunity to receive feedback. And then basically what happens is once you complete the registration, you will then find out from us whether or not you have been invited to apply and submit your formal application. So, assuming that you are invited to apply and you submit your application, in terms of how the process works, the first stage would be stage one, which is our initial review. And at that stage, our strategic applicant consultants, I think I'll just say SACs from here on in because it's a bit of a mouthful, our SACs like Laura will basically complete an initial review of all applications that the SAC has been allocated, and they will look to take 30 of those applications through to stage two, with the 30%, with the 70% that they're not taking through to stage two. All applicants will get bespoke written feedback so they can go away, take on board that feedback, and if they so wish, come back again in the future to submit another proposal. So for the 30% that do get to the ideas testing stage, that will essentially be, an interview with the SAC as a critical friend to sort of kick the tires on the funding ask and your approach with the funding ask, and just to make sure, that it's the right funding ask and whether or not it will achieve what you hope it will be able to achieve. So kind of looking at the strategy behind the funding ask, the strategy of the organization, and really just sort of being that critical friend and kicking the tires on that. And then sort of going through that stage two process, some of that the 30% of the applications will fall away naturally as the SAC goes through the process. Any organizations that are taken to that stage two stage will get verbal feedback from the SAC if they are unsuccessful. And then with the candidates that are passing beyond stage two, the next stage is stage three, which is the funding panels, which is where our SACs will take your pitch and your proposal to our funding panels, and a decision will be made on whether or not to award funding. Then after that, it's a stage four, which is awarding the funding to the successful applicants, and also linking the applicants up with that wider wraparound package of skills support through the pro bono network. And then just a couple of key dates. So the key dates at the minute is the register to apply period. So the registration will be open for 1 week from 12 p.m. midday today, Thursday the 27th of March, to 12 p.m. midday, Thursday the 3rd of April. And you can find out everything you need under the Apply for Funding section of our webpage. As I said, we might have to allocate places at random if we have more registrations than places available on the funding round. And if you do register, you will find out the outcome of that registration either way by Friday, the 4th of April. And I should just say the registration form itself just takes a couple of minutes to complete and asks for some very basic information. And then step two is preparing your application. So if you are invited to apply after registration, you would then be required to prepare and submit your application by 5 o'clock on the 28th of April. And then basically funding decisions would be announced in July. So just, I thought it was also just worth very briefly touching on what it is we're looking for in the application itself. So we're looking to see visionary leadership for the organization. And we're also looking to see that the funding ask will have a transformational impact on the organization itself. I won't go into too much detail on what transformational impact means here, because I know, Laura, you're going to talk about it a little bit, but it's basically a step change for your organization in terms of sustainability, scale, resilience, or impact. And in terms of the strength of leadership component, we would be looking at management. So, is there a strong chief exec and board, organization structure, the financial situation, and X factor? And by X factor, we mean, is there a strong potential of the organization to grow, replicate, or innovate? So what I'll do now is I will bring Laura on. Hello, Laura.
Hi.
Um, nice to see you. So yeah, so I suppose before we get into the questions, I think we can maybe just have a quick chat to Laura to hopefully shine a little bit more light on the role of an SAC in the process, and also, what Laura looks for in terms of transformational impact when she's looking at applications as well. So yeah, Laura, I guess just kicking off, can you just tell me a bit about your background, really?
Sure. I've worked across all three sectors, but focused mainly on the charity sector. I've previously worked in grant funding and capacity building of small charities, but these days I'm CEO of a local disability charity, trustee of another charity, and I work on a freelance basis as a consultant for the Fore and also as a consultant grant writer for my local CBS.
Brilliant,
So I,
Laura, thanks.
I enjoy doing both sides.
It's great. And I suppose, I mean, what do you like most about the role as SAC at the Fore?
I would say for me, it's probably the wide range of organisations that I get to work with, and also the fact that it is that transformation piece. Really, it's the fact that they're at such a pivotal stage in their development with usually such a key opportunity to unlock growth that just makes it really exciting.
Lovely, Laura, thank you. And then I suppose coming on to that point about what does transformational impact look like to you, and what do you look for in an application form? I mean, it would just be interesting to get your take on that.
Sure. I suppose really the key thing is about the Fore's funding having that long-term significant impact on the organisation itself, rather than, for example, directly funding support for beneficiaries. It's completely different for every organisation, but it's quite often something that scales them, or perhaps develops a new income stream, could be changing its whole operating model, or improving efficiency, like introducing a first CRM for an organisation that's working on spreadsheets and bits of paper. First staff members can make a really big difference, giving that capacity and leadership. It is completely different for every organisation, but
Yeah,
those are some typical ones.
brilliant. Thanks so much, Laura. Okay, so I feel like that's probably enough about kind of the process and what we're looking for. So yeah, I'd just like to throw it open now to attendees to ask questions. So, feel free to put your hand up and you can ask your question, or you can also just drop it into the chat as well.
Yes. When I first joined the club.
Okay, so I can see Nisba has got a question in the chat. We are based in the Northwest, but our work is national. does it matter which one we apply for? And I would say in that instance, you would probably be better applying to the national round rather than the Northwest, because the Northwest round is a bit like the Cornish round, where basically we would basically say in terms of the Northwest that you must be an organization registered in the Northwest, but you also should have the majority of your beneficiaries based there. So it depends, if the majority of your beneficiaries are based in the Northwest, then by all means go for the Northwest funding round. But if not, then just go for the national one. Victoria.
Hello, thank you. So we've never applied for this before. We're a small cancer charity in Norfolk. We are at the very sort of initial stages. We've had a new board on, we've got a new CEO board, we've got some staffing changes. Do we need to be a bit further along in our, so next stage is strategy development, board development. Do we need to be a bit further along in our sort of stage of having a 5 to 10 year plan in place, etc. before, because we've got so many projects that we want to apply for, but would we be better to sort of wait for the next funding round, or is it worth registering and then speaking to someone about the projects we've got, because we are at a real pivotal point of our change at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. Laura, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I would say that it would be worth applying. I think actually, if you get through that first initial sift, your strategic applicant consultant can work with you on refining exactly what you're asking for.
Yeah.
The fact that you're all new, as long as you're really emphasising in your application the skills and experience that the leaders are bringing, then you're still putting that kind of thing in place. And I think you said it yourself when you said you feel you're at a pivotal point.
Well, absolutely, we're on the edge basically. So
so that really is what the Fore is all about. And also from a sort of cynical point of view, there is no exclusion period with the Fore, so if you didn't get it this time, it wouldn't be, a case to be excluded for a couple of years. So if it worked out that you were better off reapplying in a year's time, you wouldn't have lost anything.
Okay. So we register now, and then we hear back from the Fore if we're next through to the next step. So do we need to have a project decided then, or is that when we work with yourselves about which project we should apply for? How does it work?
So you don't need to have it in order to put in that initial registration, but you then need to be able to say in the application that follows that what you get to create 3 pages, and then you do need to say what you're applying for.
And
it can be refined and changed. It can be refined and changed after that point. It's not set in stone, but it's that 3 pages that it would be being sifted in or out on at stage 1.
That's really helpful. Thank you ever so much.
And then Kelly, do you want to go with your question?
Hello, how are you? Are you all right? We're calling from sunny Pembrokeshire in Wales. I know. I actually got sunburnt 2 days ago, which is crazy in March, but there we go. Hey,
very jealous.
Well, I know it's raining today. We basically are a completely grassroots, volunteer-led kick. Everything we've done is all about basically really making an impact within the area that we are. Obviously, as you can imagine, we've got a lot of rural sort of communities who very often get left behind. In Wales, there's a massive restructure of statutory services, and lots of people are falling out of the system, being very unsupported. We've developed a really beautiful facility, and we're really keen to keep our grassroots approach, because actually that's the world of difference for who we are. But our volunteer board basically there's 5 of us, and I'm one of them, and we're at that kind of very much. I really resonated with what you said, Laura. We're at a real pivotal point whereby we want to sustain what we do and have some sustainability, and we've been trying really hard to create that. So we're developing and trying to develop new income streams, and the local authority are kind of really keen to work with us, but we've got to develop that sort of like tier within it. We need that extra bit of revenue to do that, and also help us to sort of then really have a bit of a long-term plan with it. So we're kind of at that point whereby all of the things that you said, we were like, yes, 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 Laura, this is great. But would we fit under the national fund? Because obviously I could see you had the southwest, which Cornwall, and then you had the north. Would we then typically go for the national fund?
Yes, Kelly, I'd go for the national.
You're a star. Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Have a great time. Take
No
care.
problem. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
And then we've got Croydon Voluntary Action. And I can see you also have a question in the chat. I wonder, is it the same
Yes,
question? Yeah.
sorry, I'm trying to start my video, but it's not playing
Oh,
up.
no, don't worry.
Apologies. It's just the same question I've got in the chat. We are going through a transformational time, potentially merging with another organization, aligning, expertise, and really, hopefully, making the most of both organizations' skills and knowledge and assets. So that's where we're coming from, looking at this. So I hope that kind of it has potential for your support. And I also wanted to check whether I would be applying to the national one. We're in Croydon, so it's part of Greater London.
Yes, so you that sounds great. And yes, you would apply to the national one.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then there's a couple of eligibility questions in the chat, which I think I'll just take first, and then I'll go back to people with their hands up, if that's okay. So someone, let's see, Kath has said, we are a cooperative. Are we eligible to apply? From what I understand, cooperatives can have different sort of legal structures, but basically to be eligible to apply, you would need to be either a registered charity, a KIC limited by guarantee, a community benefit society that is either a charitable community benefit society or a non-charitable community benefit society with an asset. So, for example, if you are a cooperative structure, but you are also a community benefit society, then you would be eligible to apply. And the best thing I would say, Kath, for you to do if you're worried about eligibility is we have a little eligibility checker on our website, and it literally takes no more than a minute to do. So I would just suggest go off and do that, and you can get a definitive answer. So Leo has said, we inherited a social enterprise that is a limited company. Are these funds limited to charities? I kind of hope I've kind of just answered that question. It's not just limited to charities. We do fund community interest companies that are limited by guarantee. So if you fall into that bracket, then you would be eligible to apply. And again, if you're worried about eligibility, just have a go on the eligibility checker. And then I will go to some people with their hands up now because I don't want to leave you all waiting too long. So I think, Ishan, you had your hand up first, and then Mari, I'll come to you after.
Thank you. So I'm Ishan, founder and CEO of Travel Hands. Travel Hands is an Uber-like service based in London, where we help visually impaired people or VIP to get around the city from point A to point B or get their tasks done. So we are a hybrid based charity where we have our customer service and as well as tech. We did apply to the previous round. We got to the first stage, didn't get through. The feedback was great to understand exactly what the fund is looking for, which is where we lacked was in terms of explaining how the organization is going through transformational change, not just the work we do, the organization, right? So my question to you is, like a lot of other social enterprises at the moment, we're trying to see how we can increase our revenue streams. And we can't really charge a hefty sum of money to our service users. We have a B2C model, but it's not like enough to sustain. Then we have our B2B model, which we are trying to explore and see how we can scale that. So through our B2B sales model, we want to bring that transformation to the organization. Would that be considered as transformation of the organization through this process?
Thanks, Ishan. Laura, do you want to answer that? Because I think you'll do a much better job at it than I will.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, Ishan, you're essentially exploring different models that are going to help you to scale there. So absolutely, yes.
And by different models, I mean, like, we do have some of these sponsorships and grants, but then we're looking at, with this fund, we're looking at how do we increase our sales, like B2B sales. That's what
Mhm.
the focus is. And in terms of a follow-up question on that is that, in terms of, like, it seems there's a lot of support from the Fore. So do you support in that journey? Let's say, hey, we're trying to find the need in the current ecosystem and create our B2B sales. So would the support around our proposition would be like that? Like, for example, a sales consultant guiding us, or a mentor, especially helping us with creating that revenue model?
Francis, you're probably better placed to
Yeah.
answer that one.
So it depends. I mean, and what I would say, with organizations that we do back, if they have a request that they think could be our pro bono network could help with, to absolutely put the request in and see what happens. And I feel like some of what you're saying there, around the sales and the income model, it sounds a bit like commercialization. And I know we have people that would be able to help with that, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant. And then Mari.
Hi, thank you very much. So currently we are part of a large organisation, a large charitable organisation, and we are going to become an independent and become an organisation within ourselves. So obviously we need to get a board and we need to set up everything going forward. And we just wonder, is there help with regards to going forward with this? So we're part of Voluntary Action Shetland at present, with the Shetland Befriending Scheme, and it's actually celebrating my 25th year. So we will be going forward, becoming independent, and I guess not having the same, well, we'll need to get a board, but we'll not be having the same staff support around us as we previously had. Is this something that you could help us going forward with?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, what I would say, Mari, is apply when you have broken away and you've set up on your own and you're sort of a registered charity or whatever the structure is that you want to go for. And absolutely, we with the organizations that we fund and we support, we would absolutely be able to help you build your board. And we've done that with quite a lot of our organizations. And basically, we'd have a chat with you to work out, what are the skills that you really need from the board. And then we would basically advertise those vacancies within our pro bono portal. And then off the back of that, we would be able to feed you suitable candidates that you would want to speak to. So yeah, we definitely would be able to help with that.
Okay, that's fine. The thing is that going forward, the current organisation we're with, they're not keen to let us go until we have a board and everything's set up, so we're good to go, sort of thing. So I'm just wondering where we sort of sit. I know we can apply for charitable status before we become independent and have a charity number and such like. So I wasn't sure whether we should be applying before we actually do or we don't. We're kind of in a sticky situation, and we just want to make sure that going forward, we're going to have enough support to be able to do what we've currently been doing for the last 25 years, sort of thing, and to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, well, from our perspective, you would need to, if you wanted to apply, you would need to be the registered charity or one of those other things, unfortunately. And then we wouldn't, just because of the capacity we have and the capacity of the pro bono team, we wouldn't be able to link you up with board members until you sort of came through the process. And I totally get what you're saying, because it's a bit of a catch-22. But then I suppose maybe what you could do in the meantime is you do go get yourself registered. You get a small sort of quorum of board members for the minute, but then you kind of recognize, actually, that's just to get you across that initial first hurdle. And then with our support, if you secure the funding from us, you would then be able to really build up that board based on your sort of gap analysis and the skills. Sorry, I know that's not ideal, but I hope that's useful.
No, it's okay. I know it gets a bit confusing. Yeah, and I suppose because Shetland is such a small place as well, it can become quite.
It's a bit chicken and egg. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mari, and best of luck with it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that also. Thank you.
Brilliant. And then maybe I'll go back to the chat to see we have any other questions, which we do. So Robert, you have said, if we receive funding, what is the time commitment required to attend training, advice, and networking sessions? And the answer there is no time commitment. You can go to as much or as little of it as you like. Obviously, we would love you to go to some of it, but we're not going to compel you to do that. We realize you're all very, very busy people, and sometimes those types of things are a luxury. But of course, we would encourage it because we know from feedback from other organizations that have had that additional wraparound support, they found it incredibly helpful. But yet, no commitment. And in terms of any sort of formal time commitment from us, it would be, a 1 hour block of your time to have a monitoring and evaluation call with you over the course, once a year over the course of your grant life cycle. So if you have a grant over 3 years, that will be 1 hour long meeting with you online every year for 3 years. If you only have the grant with us over 1 year, it would be the 1 hour call. Hope that's useful. And Kieran has said, will you be sending the slides? Yes, we'll send around the slides. I'll send around the slides after for sure. And then we've got Miriam. We found out about registration on the 4th of April. What about the rest of the application? When is the final deadline? Let me just have a little look back. So the final deadline, if you're invited to submit an application, is 5 p.m. on Monday, the 28th of April. And then we've got Croydon voluntary action again. Is there an income threshold for groups to apply? We would ask that your income is less than 500k. And then Jacob, we're a KIC limited by shares with the Schedule 2 constitution, donating 100% of surplus funds to our charity. We cannot and do not issue dividends. The charity has only been registered for a year, so we don't have any accounts for that yet. How would be best to apply with this model? So it sounds like you've got a charity that is sort of running in parallel to the KIC limited by shares, if I haven't misunderstood. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you would need to apply through the charity because I completely appreciate what you're saying about the constitution and how, the money is all sort of pumped back in. But basically, from our perspective, legally, we can't fund KICs limited by shares because it's sort of set out in our constitution and it's been signed off by our trustees. And I think the main reason for that is, it does require extra due diligence, and also we're a really small team, and it also means that we need to go get legal advice, and we don't really have the budget for that either. So I would say go through your charity route, but I would make it quite clear in the application what the link is between both of them, so the SAC has everything they need to make sure they understand the relationship and they've no concerns with it.
That sounds good. It keeps the charity below the 500k revenue, which the KIC isn't, and then we can at least show that we're not just out of the blue. It's something with a bit of structure behind it. So that sounds really good. Thank you ever so much for that.
Brilliant, Jacob. And then I can see, Kelly, you've got your hand up, and then I can come back to more questions in the chat if no other people put their hand up after, but I'm sure there will be some people. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, sorry about this, literally. When you ask questions and then you think,
that's why we're here.
Oh, I love it. It's brilliant. Thank you. It's been really helpful. Obviously, the application process will give us a bit more sort of like guidance with regards to revenue or capital projects and things like that. What is the anticipated sort of, is there a cap of how much in application is it, like with National Lottery, it's like up to £20,000. You can have it for up to 2 years funding. What are you envisaging in this kind of round of funding, the cap, or are you looking for sort of like mixture projects? And for the timeline of how long are you looking to work with an organisation? Is it a year or is it 2 years or 3 years?
Yeah, Laura, do you want to take that one? Because I know you see a whole range.
Sure. So the anything really from 1 year to 3 years, and anything up to £30,000, which you can split any way you like. That could be 30,000 over 1 year. That could be 10,000 over 3. Doesn't have to be an even split if there's a reason why it works differently for you. As long as it doesn't go over 3 years, otherwise pretty much up to you.
So it's 30,000 basically as a total lump. So if you wanted to go over 3 years, you could have 10, 10, 10, or it could basically be a 1 year project where you went 30,000, and that could basically, so like for someone like us, we were looking at bringing on a project worker, which would really help us because we're all complete volunteers at this moment in time. But having somebody who was employed would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. You could structure that however you wanted, as long as that project worker, as long as you're making it clear that they are making a transformational impact on the organisation, not on your beneficiaries, then yeah.
Oh, massively so on the organisation. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Thank
Brilliant.
you.
Thanks, Kelly. And then I can see in the chat, we've got Rebecca who has a question. I'm here on behalf of 3 organisations. I'll ask 3 separate questions so as not to hog things. Thank you, Rebecca. That's very considerate. Time Banking UK. This will be our 3rd or 4th try, and we've never got past registration. How does that first sift work? So basically, the first sift is completely random to keep the sort of the decision on whether or not to invite an organisation to submit an application is completely random. We sort of do it through a randomizer. It's nothing to do with the team at the fore. We know it's not ideal, and we know that this sort of thing happens, but basically, I think it kind of links back to what I said earlier. You know, we're not sitting on a massive endowment. We're out there like a lot of you guys fundraising to bring in money, and basically that's why. I mean, we'd love to invite everyone that registers their interest to apply, but we just don't have the funds to have a sort of sensible grant ratio to application. And also, if we were to invite more people to apply, we would get into a position where we wouldn't be able to provide feedback, and we really do see feedback as being incredibly valuable. So I know it's imperfect, but it's the best we can do really, and all I would say in that instance for time banking to just keep trying. And then we've got Rachel. We are a small childcare community charity run by parents for parents. We're 57 years old, but have recently had financial issues. So we're looking at expanding the charity with volunteer and funding officers to ensure we are there for the next 60 years. So we are looking at future proofing. Is this something that the fore would look at? Absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense, Rachel. And I think, you know, linking back to what Laura has said a couple of times, it's just sort of really pulling out the transformational impact on the organization itself rather than sort of focusing on the impact on beneficiaries. And then Rebecca, so the next question was for the 4-Day Week Foundation. Oh, brilliant. That's nice. Love it when that happens. Already answered the question. And then we have Charlie. We are currently a volunteer-run organisation and looking to fund our coordinator to ensure our model is more robust. The funds would enable us to secure their posts so they can focus on partnership development and fundraising. Is this transformational, or is it considered as BAU? Laura, do you want to answer that one? Because I feel like that's the sort of thing that you would see.
Yeah, I think that very much depends on how you demonstrate the impact of that post. You've already got them in post, doesn't mean that being able to keep them won't in itself be transformational, but if they're going to be carrying on doing more of the same, it may not come out as highly as some other applicants. But if that role is going to be focusing slightly differently, where you talk about partnerships and fundraising, perhaps if there's some really particular transformational partnerships you've got in mind there that sustaining this role is going to enable you to capitalize on, then yeah, absolutely, it could be transformational.
Brilliant, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great. And then Leo, you have a question around eligibility for a limited company with voluntary community social enterprise. I don't really know an awful lot about voluntary community social enterprises. I guess what I would say to you there is, I mean, the eligibility criteria is, are you a registered charity? Are you a KIC limited by guarantee? Are you a community benefit society that is either charitable or non-charitable with an asset lock? And if you tick one of those boxes, you would be eligible, assuming your income is under 500k. And I think what we'll do as well actually is we can share the link to our eligibility checker when we're sharing this information after, so that if anyone's in doubt about their eligibility, they can go and fill that out. And then Rebecca, your third question, Common Canvas. How long do you need to have existed to qualify? We're brand new, but with lots of community backing. That's absolutely fine. But there's no sort of criteria on you have to be in existence for X number of months. So that's not a problem. Miriam.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My microphone sometimes doesn't work, so thank you very much. I don't know where the hand gesture was, so natural hand. My question is in regards to the transformational impact on the organization.
Oh, Miriam, you've like vanished. Your voice has vanished a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So my question is the aspect of the transformational the transformation on the company as opposed to the beneficiaries. Obviously, we have an impact on the beneficiaries. Do we talk about it in the application? Is it worth obviously mentioning it to some degree in some format? But so you'll be expecting to see any sort of in terms of how much shall we focus on it in the application?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, really good question, Miriam. And Laura, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think I got the question. There's certainly related any great transformation for your organization is obviously going to have a great impact on your beneficiaries. So drawing that through is absolutely fine, especially if it's going to do something like, you're expanding, you're scaling, you've got a new operating model, whatever it may be. And so now you're going to reach a lot more people. That's definitely worth mentioning. But just make sure your focus is staying on the transformation for the organization.
Lovely, thank you. And then I can see Lisa has put a question into the chat. When you say the grant for an employee must benefit the company, not beneficiaries, is that not the same thing? Can you explain further? Thanks. I mean, I suppose maybe to give a bit of context, I could give you a sort of, I don't know, a mock example of a request for an employee. It might be that, the organization relies fundamentally on volunteers, and a lot of, I don't know, the leader's time is taken up by volunteer management. In that instance, the funding request could be for a volunteer coordinator to basically manage the volunteers and bring in more volunteers actually to allow the organization to increase its social impact, but sort of you would also maybe expect to see some spin-off benefits there where, the leader's time is now freed up as a result of the volunteer coordinator, which basically then means the leader has more time to sort of look at developing relationship with corporates and other partners. And then sort of off the back of that sort of strengthening of the organization and the benefit to the company itself, in turn, the sort of byproduct of that is being able to support more beneficiaries as a result of them being able to more efficiently handle and manage their volunteers, but also as a result of the leader having that capacity to generate income streams to then feed back into direct delivery. So I kind of hope that helps answer the question a bit. And I feel like it was also kind of linked to the question that Miriam asked as well. And then crowd and voluntary action. I can see you've got your hand up.
Sorry. Yes. I heard, and I just wanted a confirmation that you need to have an income less than 500k per year.
That's right. Yes.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. And then we've got Sandra. Would you support an infrastructure organization? We wish to transform the way local voluntary organizations do the amazing work that they do. At the moment, I am a CEO without a team, but this funding would bring in more resources so we can carry on growing and transform the way we do things through digital training, etc. Laura, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Infrastructure organizations absolutely eligible. And you're talking about transforming your organization and the way you do things. So yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. So I think that's all the questions in the chat answered, and I can't see any hands up. Does anybody else have any final questions for us? No, I will take that silence as a good sign and meaning that we've answered all the questions. So Leo has said, what does a strong application look like? I'd say, I mean, I suppose it's kind of stuff that we've touched on throughout. And Laura, maybe you can chip in, but I think that the main thing is that you can clearly tell the story of how our funding will help transform your organization and create a step change in the organization, whether that be kind of in terms of efficiencies, in terms of how it operates. Yeah, and basically, I would also say linked to that, in the application, we do ask you to include targets that can help us sort of measure the success of our grant over the time period that your grant is live. And we would just ask that those targets are kept smart with clearly quantifiable elements, although they don't need to be perfect because, of course, the likes of Laura would be working with applicants to sort of refine and strengthen those targets if the applicant is taken to stage 2 and beyond. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to say, Laura, other than that.
I think that pretty much covers it. I think the only other thing would be not to assume that the strategic applicant consultant doing that initial sift knows what you do. They probably don't know your organization at all. So just making sure that is really clear what you do, what you're asking for, what difference it's going to make.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think how important is sustainability in your application? And that's from Sarita. Sarita, I'm going to assume you're talking about financial sustainability there. I'd say I think it's really important in the application because, we would want to see that as a result of our funding, you're putting things in place that can be sustained after our funding ends. So, if it's funding a role and there's no sort of focus on financial resilience or financial sustainability, we would then therefore obviously have some concerns that, after our funding comes to an end, that role would have to sort of cease to exist and you might therefore revert back to the way you were before. So I do feel like that is important. Great. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And Laura, thank you so much for coming along as well.
No problem.
Great. And as I said, we will share the recording, we'll share the slides, yeah, and a link to the eligibility tracker as well. Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye.